Hi, we're here to talk about the permanent collection at GSU and some of the special pieces that we have in there, but I think it would make sense to start out talking a little bit about your background, what your education, where you got it.
I came to Governor State back in January of 1977, and specifically to teach the art of Africa, Oceania, Pre-Columbian, in other words, non-Western.
Non-Western art.
Yes, and from that, my own background was I had come from doctoral studies at Indiana University, Bloomington. Studied under Roy Sieber, who sort of invented the discipline of the formal study of African art and non-Western art too there. But yes, and then I had been in the Congo, what is now the Congo.
That was
Right.
the emphasis of your area of study was.
Yes, the area of African art was the main area, and specifically was the art of the Yaka and the Suku, who live really in what is now the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And I had been there for the better part of a year, studying use of masks and coming to manhood ceremonies, as well as use of statuettes and medicinal uses, that is to say curing.
What was that year there like for you?
Oh, wow, it was filled with adventure, really.
What was the language?
Well, I spoke to various people, largely in French. Although I did know some Kiyaka and Kisuku, and phrases mainly. And I used really an assistant who was also a translator. And so he would really conduct the interviews, and I would sort of lead him. And then we would translate and tape and translate the interviews, and from that I accumulated a lot of information that I have been busy using for the past 30 years. Right?
What was the most memorable, transformative moment during that year there?
Oh, there were so many.
Yeah.
It's hard to bring it down to a single formula, but of course the Mukanda or Nakanda is really the coming of age ceremony itself, and I saw it happen in two different villages, one at the beginning of it and the other one towards the end, and it was from that experience, of course, that it was the key. That was the key target of my research. But I also was adopted by a family, and that made it quite interesting. But I have many stories to tell.
That could take the entirety of the interview, I'm sure. So how do you think that influenced this collection and the
Well,
time
when I first came to
between-
Governor State, right in the neighborhood, there was a former administrator who had been at Governor State, Mary Endres. And she had taken like a sabbatical and spent it largely in Nigeria. And I soon found out about that, and also saw the various objects she brought back. But I would borrow them for my classes at Governor State. And eventually she gave some to both Governor State as well as to me.
Because this has always been a teaching collection, is that right?
That's correct, right.
And it served other functions and connected with other exhibitions.
Well, we've exhibited the collection, at least the initial collection, even off campus a few times, but more recent years it's been restricted to campus. We've had smaller shows just of the collection, sometimes between the various gallery shows. You can appreciate that as gallery director at
Yes.
Governor State. Right?
Experiences in the classroom because of this, and how would you describe it, the importance of having a collection like this and using it in this way?
Well, the collection comes from various people. It's largely friends of mine, really. Some art dealers who gave perhaps initially some kind of their second best objects, to the university as a way of as a tax incentive, and so. In other words, I wanted objects that I could pass around so people could handle them, so they could do some quick studies of, in other words, the range of styles within a given subject matter. And from that, over the years, the quality of the objects became, in other words, of such that students don't handle them anymore. And some, of course, are fragile. So we've had both African, Pre-Columbian, Oceanic collections almost right from the very beginning, and including other things from Indonesia and even the Arabic world.
What would you estimate the size of the collection to be?
Well, I just use the ballpark number, about 800 objects.
800?
Some of them are so large, as you know, in E-Lounge, which is right off of one of them, a major university multi-purpose room right off the art gallery. And that in particular area, of course, houses some 25 feet high house posts from Papua New Guinea, other things on the wall there. So those are a permanent exhibition. But most of the collection is really in a storeroom, really off the room I normally teach in. So it's accessible.
Yes.
At least to me.
Yes. Well, and to the students. Right. And that, have you had experiences where, or know people who are teaching classes where they don't have this kind of
most
thing?
Places, unless they're at a major university that has a museum.
What feedback do you get from students that directly speaks to this experience of being able to see these objects and handle them?
Well, some of it is just in class when I'm covering the subject matter, and we'll see a number of visuals of comparative objects, and I'll simply say, well, we have one of those. And I make a quick disappearance into the storeroom, come out with the object, and then it's sort of real. It's not just an image on a screen. It's something that they can touch and then compare and get to feel the weight of it, as well as other qualities that normally you don't experience.
Because most of these objects are outside of our Western concept of art, where we have art on gallery walls and in museums, but these are objects that were made to be used, am I correct?
Yes.
And in ceremonies or rituals, and so they were handled, they were worn or danced.
That's correct. Sometimes they too would have costumes. Incidentally, I do have even some costumes from some of these areas. So it's not just sculpture, although it's largely sculpture, but there's some full costumes connected up with different ethnic groups.
And so where would you like to see the collection in the future?
Well, the collection obviously needs exposure. It needs an area where people, outsiders too, can get some access to it. As I say, the quality is there of the objects. It needs security. And so a combination of having greatest access as well as security demands some kind of limited area. Various areas have more recently been suggested, such as in the Governor State University Library in a particular area where it would be secure and be well lit, and it has a great deal of interest to faculty and staff at the university. But also maybe eventually having a particular gallery area as part of the library as a separate facility, a separate building. And so there would be an ethnographic, or other things could be exhibited there as well. There are a number of biology projects on campus that need some kind of exposure. There is obviously the sculpture park, and perhaps the models for some of the monumental works could be shown there with a longer commentary, and other things that need exposure on campus.
It sounds exciting.
Yes.
My name is Michel Nguessan. I'm an associate professor of library and information services here at Governor State. I'm originally from the Ivory Coast. The Ivory Coast is a country in West Africa, and within the Ivory Coast, you have different microcultural nations, and I belong to the Baoulé nation within the Ivory Coast. Baoulé is the geographic center of the Ivory Coast, around major cities like Bouaké and Yamoussoukro.
Where did you study?
Around the world. I studied back home in the Ivory Coast, in Baoulé land first, and then I went to the National University of the Ivory Coast, where I finished a master's degree in the late 90s, and in the late 80s, in 1990. And after that, I went to France. That was typical at that time of student in the Ivory Coast to go to France for further studies. So I went for studies at the University of Lyon in France, where I spent only a year, and I came here in Illinois. I came to the University of Illinois in Champaign in '92, where I finished a PhD in French linguistics. This is a sacred mask among the Baoulé of the Ivory Coast. A sacred mask is a mask that is the physical representation of some kind of spirit in the traditional system of belief. This represents the spirit of the forest, or the spirit in the forest, because in the system of belief, you have God above, and below God you have the spirits, and below the spirits you have the humans. And the spirits certainly play a kind of communication role between the humans and God. And the spirits also protect the humans in the village. So the spirits, the Bonwamwe, the spirits of the forest, reside in the forest. This is a physical representation of that. They do this physical representation because that's what they can physically bring to the village whenever they need to perform some ceremonies. And they come to the village to perform ceremonies of purification and to provide protection to the members of the village. It's a secret society. The Bonwamwe is a secret society. Only people who are initiated can go into the forest, and only those who are initiated can attend the visit of the Bonwamwe when it comes to the village. It is carried over the head by the main dancer of the Bonwamwe, and it's a piece of the outfit over the head, and the rest of the outfit is made of raffia palm leaves and some fabrics like this, kente.
Chandler, and we're here today with Lydia Morrow Ritten. Tell me a little bit about yourself, Lydia.
I've been at Governor State for 24 years now, and I'm currently the interim dean of the library.
How did you find out about the teaching art collection at Governor State?
Well, I always knew that Art Bourgeois had a treasure trove of materials somewhere on campus. We saw evidence of it in the E-Lounge, and I'd always heard rumors that there was a room full of items, and I became aware of that room full maybe a month ago when I walked in the library and saw one of our professors, one of our library professors, Michelle and Art Bourgeois talking, and they immediately called me over and said they had this wonderful idea. So, of course, they brought me upstairs and I saw the treasure trove.
Okay.
And they talked about their idea of bringing some of those materials into the library. So
Great.
we've been working on that ever since they
Great.
they collaborated.
Okay, good deal. Good.